And a good Wednesday, everybody. If you're listening to this in podcast form, of course, we know it's Thursday morning. If you're listening to it, though, as we're doing it live, good Wednesday to you, as we said. Wednesday, October 27th. It is Pac-12 football and beyond as we talk really all things college football. We'll focus a lot on the the Pac-12, and then next hour we'll do the same with the Big 12. But we like to go through all the games, all the teams, get you update on everything that's going on around the world of the conference, but also kind of take an overview of from a national perspective of where things are. We've got two coaching searches that are currently ongoing in the Pac-12. Are there going to be any others? We'll get into that. We'll hand out some game balls. We'll take a look at this week's schedule. We'll take a look at how teams stack up inside the film room grade-wise. Does Oregon have an argument if they run the table? A lot of things we're going to get to today. And again, Washington State, USC in the middle of their coaching searches. So let's get after it. We've got a lot to get to today. And we'll remind you that if you're catching this on podcast form, we encourage you to join us live as we do the show. Join us on Twitch TV. You can find that at LandryFootball.com, or you can find us at YouTube on the YouTube channel. On Twitter, you can go there in the front of LandryFootball.com. You can say check the follow us for the latest news. You can go to us on Twitter and follow us there. You can go to the YouTube channel and follow us there. The Twitch TV channel. We've got it all for you. And join us live in the chat room. That's what we're here for. We'll take your questions on anything to do with football. We got it all for you here. A reminder that we're going to have, as we always do, all the film room breakdowns from this past weekend are up, the detailed ones over not just the Pac-12, but every conference. We've got it for you. And all the breakdowns coming up for this upcoming week, we've got for you as well. So all of that out of the way. A reminder, I've got to remind myself. I was getting ready to say to remind me, but it's my job to remind myself to tell you about our good friends at the Daily Tip and why you want to join them to find out more about your gaming needs. So I'm going to start off kind of at the top with some of the latest news and notes. And I'm going to start with the coaching searches where there is, as I mentioned at the beginning, two searches going on right now at Washington State and at USC. In terms of USC, there's no news to speak of. Oh, there was the whole outrage of what is going on with Mike Tomlin, which was nothing. Carson Palmer, along with Ryan Clark, not just Carson. A number of folks just floated out Mike Tomlin's name as a viable candidate for the USC job. He clearly put that to rest. But, it is unfortunate that a lot of times we have to go there because it's not fair to a coach who has not shown any interest. There's nothing going on in the process, yet somebody with no clue throws out a concept and an idea that's nothing more than just ballroom talk that makes its way through the internet, social media, what have you, talk radio interviews, and it's now something that a coach has to address. Again, not fair. It is, but it's not just that the coach has to address it. It's just inaccurate. We are living, and I mentioned this on one of the shows yesterday that I did, that we're living in the world of not what's accurate or not. What's going to create clicks? What is something that is going to draw interest? Well, I think this guy would be good at. Boom, there it is. So and so says the next candidate for this job is going to be, it's irresponsible. It's not accurate, and it's not the way coaching search works. And for somebody like Mike Tomlin, it's an insult. Not an insult that you'd be thought of high enough to be considered, but the reality is he's got a better job. He is at the highest level of football coaching and has had success. And he would take it, and this maybe he shouldn't take it this way, but he'll take it as um, I'm not doing a good enough job, therefore I'm looking for a way out. It's clearly not what he's doing. And when you're coaching, and I can speak from my own personal experience, when you're coaching, working at the next level in the NFL, the thought of college football is an insult that you would have to take a step down. Um, it's not in good form. Now, there are certain coaches that, for whatever reason, it doesn't work out. They going back to college may make some sense. But if you're deemed a success, why would you consider that? Well, most wouldn't, and I think this is the case here. Some latest news around the conference. It looks like Dorian Thompson-Robinson is available. He's dealing with an injury right now, but he's going to be available, it looks like, for this week. Aaron Lowe, jersey's going to be retired. Tough story for them. Some positive reviews from Drake London all year long. Anthony Brown getting some kudos for the way that he's played. It looks like Theo Howard, the Utah receiver, is uncertain for Saturday's game against UCLA. And Kayvon Thibodeau continues to be the chosen one, certainly someone that I think is going to be very, very high in terms of draft picks. Kingsley Sumatia, the freshman offensive tackle from Oregon, has entered the transfer portal. That's the latest there. For more news and notes about what's going on around the Pac-12 and every other conference, check it out over at LandryFootball.com. Take advantage of the football season sale. So the Washington State job, as I delve into it and study it, the interim coach, Jack Dickert, is someone that we're going to have to watch and see how they respond to him and how well they play the rest of the year. And at a place like Washington State, that you put an interim in and he's got enough of a chance to prove himself through the rest of the season. And if they play well enough, keep in mind that the candidates for the job are likely to be assistant coaches, coordinators that have never been a head coach. Well, Jake's going to be one of those type of guys. And if he proves it, he might get a contract and he might get the opportunity to get the job full time. Now, it depends on how the team responds, how the team plays. I mean, there's no doubt about that, and there's no hiding from that. But I think it makes more sense than, say, at a bigger time job where the pool of candidates are going to be more proven head coaches. Now, if they could perhaps convince Joe Moorhead, just as an example, who had the Mississippi State job and didn't do a bad job, and when it turns out, it probably, outside of quirky press conferences, will probably have just as good of a record and just as much success as Mike Leach will have at Mississippi State. Joe Moorhead, who is a much, much brighter offensive mind and doing a great job at Oregon, may want to get back and an opportunity there. I don't know that he does. I don't know that he's going to get a more high-profile job. So the opportunity to maybe get another shot may intrigue him. Somebody like that makes some sense, and he's a former head coach. I don't know that we're going to see that, though. It is not a job that's going to attract a lot of proven head coach type guys. So I'm curious to see where this plays out. Um, as far as USC is concerned, look, the evaluation continues. There is a lot of talk publicly about James Franklin. I don't know that USC is as serious about James Franklin as has been reported. As I mentioned in the Big Ten show, James Franklin is the master at promoting himself for a lot of jobs, even when he's not a candidate for the job. And he's got the ultimate promoter in that regard that he's hired as an agent in Jimmy Sexton. By the way, to further update that story, there's a little bit of a discrepancy amongst the agents involved as to when James changed agents. My understanding was that it was done in the summer, but apparently nothing was officially done until recently. I don't know what the case is there. I don't know that it's that big of a deal, other than the fact that if you're a self promoter, you probably and you don't feel like your name is getting promoted well enough, and you can find someone that you feel can do the best job at it. Um, Jimmy Sexton is that guy. And so James has moved on to him. I don't know that James is in as good a position to get the USC job or the LSU job as the media reports have indicated. I don't think he's a strong candidate either way. But I will say that it could get him a little bit more security. The whole MO behind this is he's feeling quote unquote heat. And when I mean heat, I'm not saying that Penn State is looking to fire him, but he's feeling a lot of negative thoughts about him are taking place. James is a very thin-skinned person. And so this is his way, much like we've talked about it with Dan Mullen a little bit at Florida, of saying, you see, look, my name, all these folks are coming after me. Think about it. What are you going after? A guy that's a good recruiter, not a great recruiter, a good one, a very, in my opinion, average to below average coach. Um, I don't. There's not much there with him. I think Penn State could do better, and I'm not suggesting that they fire him. But I think if they were to lose him, it would be to Penn State's benefit. And I think there's any number of coaches that would be much better coaches, that would be much more successful. Personally, I think that USC and LSU could do a whole lot better. I mean, I would come up with 20 to 25 candidates each at both places that are better football coaches than James Franklin. But that's up to the athletic directors and the powers that be making the decisions. Look, I've seen folks like that, make decisions that are not always the smartest. But we'll see. Jeff Fisher's, another one of those. Let's throw it out there. A bunch of friends of Jeff that are ex-players. Let's throw his name out there. Just throw some attention. It gives that, hey, lets everybody know, hey, Jeff's still looking for a job. Couldn't get the Montana State job, but he's a candidate at USC. Okay, yeah, I get it. If they were going to go with somebody like that, then you'd consider maybe a Jack Del Rio, who's had some success with the Raiders, who's still an effective defensive coordinator. We'll see. But there are a lot of good candidates for both jobs. That's the update on both of those. As far as the play around the league this past week, I got to tell you, I've mentioned his name before, but another game ball this week goes to B.J. Baylor, the redshirt junior running back out of Oregon State, a Texas kid, Wharton, Texas kid. Second time that he's won this award for me. Drake London had a really good game. I thought Anthony Brown, the quarterback at Oregon, had a really good game. I thought Chase Garbers of Cal did a really nice job. Cam Rising of Utah. Max Borgi, the running back of Washington State. Terrell Bynum, the UW wide receiver. On defense, got to be Kayvon Thibodeau. Uh, Unbelievable job finishing out the game, dominant force in the 34-31 win at UCLA. Career highs with 9 tackles, 8 solos, and 4.5 for loss. Just outstanding game, outstanding performance. I thought Avery Roberts, the inside backer from Oregon State, Elijah Hicks, the safety from Cal, played well. Mo Diallo, the defensive lineman from Arizona, in a bad football team, a poorly coached football team, and a talent poor football team. Mo has played pretty well for the Arizona Wildcats. Brandon McKinney, the safety from Utah. Jordan Genmark, Heath from UCLA, the linebacker, and Jihad Woods, the linebacker from Washington State, all did a very, very good job on the defensive side. Special teams, probably would go with Oregon State's Luke Musgrave. He blocked a punt and recovered it to score on a 27-yard touchdown in that 42-34 win over Utah. We'll get into that game a little bit more. Offensive line, I thought Noose Keegabanum, the right guard for Oregon State, get out there from Portland, played very well. Thought he did a good job in the run game. Thought T.J. Bass of Oregon did a good job. I thought the center from Cal, Cindric, did a nice job. Josh McCauley from Arizona also did a good job. My freshman, the freshman of the year, maybe in the country, certainly in the Pac-12, Noah Sewell. It's been really good from out at Oregon from American Samoa. So really, really impressive performance there. Kiki Latu of Cal also has played very well for him. My power ratings, I got to tell you, we'll start from the bottom. That's easy with Arizona at 12. I'm going to go with Colorado 11, and they got problems. They fired Mitch Rodriguez, the offensive line coach. Then I go with Cal, then go up to UW. I mean, the way they're playing, man, USC would have to be probably 8. Then I'd go Washington State. Keep that in mind. How bad is it at USC when Washington State's also lost their coach and 4 assistants and has less talent and still would have to rank them ahead of USC? How bad is USC right now? That's criminal. Stanford at 6. Then I'd go UCLA, then Utah. Then I'd have to go Arizona State. Folks, I got to go with the Beavs at number 2. I mean, they're 3-1, 5-2. You could make the case for Arizona State. But, how about that? Oregon certainly is at number 1. So I've got to ask the question, what happens? Because this is as the rankings are going to come out starting next Tuesday, the playoff committee rankings. It's going to be, I got a scenario for you, Chris. So bring your scenarios to me. But I can only go so far in the scenarios because I rely so much on the film to tell me who I think are the 4 best that it's not just enough to say, well, this team's going to win, and what if this happens? How does it look? That matters a lot. But I've been asked this a bunch, so I'm gonna answer it. What happens if Ohio State and Oregon both run the table? Meaning they both won their conference championships, and they both ended up, 12-1. 11-1, and then win their conference championship. Look, they're not obligated to take Oregon because they won head-to-head. If they feel Ohio State looks better, plays better, they could absolutely have it. How I feel about it is it's where the flaw in the system is. Because if it's the 4 best teams on film right now, Ohio State's a better looking team than Oregon. But the games have to matter. If they don't matter, then what are we really doing? I just think those things are important, and it is the vote I think for. I've kind of come down the path of we need to have 12 teams in a playoff, and that's what we need to do. And here's why we need to do it. We don't need 12 teams. Hell, we don't need 4 teams in most cases to determine who the best team is. If the goal is to find out who the best team in college football is, I don't think we need more teams. In fact, I know we don't. But what is the right thing to do? I think the conference champions, I think with some guardrails on it, I think putting more teams in would make the back end of the season more exciting. Look, I get it. It takes a game that's really big that maybe has playoff implications, makes that game, it magnifies it so much. There's no doubt about that. It will take, let's say, a Georgia. Look, I don't think we have many this year, but let's say a Georgia Alabama SEC championship game. That's going to magnify that game because Georgia's probably in it either way. Alabama needs to win it, so it's a huge game. We've seen in the past, in the BCS era, but even in the playoff era, where a game like that or something similar would be you'll win it and you're going to be in it, or you lose it and you're out type scenario. Um, I think that those are things that we may miss a little bit. However, think about this. It would make some other games even more important. So Michigan State is a big game this week in the Big Ten, for example. I don't think either one of these teams are a playoff team. I think neither. I don't even see one of these teams as what I would call a typical top 10 type team. Neither one of them are playoff threats. But in a 12-team playoff, they could be. There's a possibility with the right record scenario they could get in as a wild card, even though they may not win the Big Ten. It's possible in a 12-team playoff. So it makes that game even more important because it's probably an elimination game even for a 12-team playoff, or could be. And then I think it makes the games in the back end intriguing. It does give somebody that's playing better, that's a little hotter, to make it. So in essence, what am I really saying? I'm going off track here to make a point of Oregon would deserve to be in under that scenario. It does not mean I think that they're as good, certainly not better, than Ohio State. But that's something that is going to be debated and factored in. What is the criteria? I do think that Oregon's still got a shot. I don't think it's a given that they win out. They've got Colorado. They've got Washington. They've got Washington State. I think they should be able to win those games. Now, they have struggled in those type of games more than the big games in the past. The game I would be concerned about would be at Utah. I would think that they could beat Oregon State at home, but Oregon State could definitely play a spoiler. So those last two games are most intriguing. But, it's not a given that at Washington, Washington State, some crazy things couldn't happen. I don't think so, but that's why they're surprises, because you don't anticipate it. But if they do go unbeaten and then they have to play the conference championship game, I think they're more threatened by the South champion. I mean, if they have to, UCLA, you saw them play, Arizona State, I think that could be really intriguing matchup for them if it comes down to that. So if they go 12-1, they certainly with the conference championship, they certainly would be in the mix. All right, let's get into some of the matchups. Washington State, Washington, and the did not look good, but managed to beat Arizona. And this was, obviously Friday night, so it seems like it's been a week. It's almost has been. I thought Arizona fought pretty hard, and it was more about Washington, though. I thought the defense for Arizona played pretty well. I thought Don Brown had his guys playing hard, but they made some pivotal mistakes. I thought Dylan Morris struggled to complete some easy throws in the first half. I thought there was a real chance for what would have been an ugly loss for Washington. Arizona has got to go to USC this week. Washington at Stanford. Um, can Arizona get it done? What an embarrassing loss. This Arizona team, which is like Kansas bad, really, really bad. One of the worst teams in the country bad, in Power 5 certainly anyway. If they would have been at USC, would be embarrassing. For Washington, tale of the two halves for Dylan Morris. Completely lost in the first half, played better in the second. I thought the running backs graded out pretty well in the game. They didn't get a whole lot of yards, but I thought they had significant yards in pivotal moments. I thought the receivers and tight ends, I thought Terrell Bynum had his best day at UW. He had 5 receptions, 143. Really, really did a nice job. The tight ends wasn't a big factor in the passing game. I didn't think they were really getting the run game, but I thought the receivers overall did a good job. The offensive line did not play well. They were without without their top lineman, Jackson Kirkland, and they struggled a bit there. There's no doubt about it. That was maybe the biggest surprise in the game, and where I thought Arizona started to make some positive impact in the game. Defensive line was missing Sam Tiamani. But Tuatili, Tunafulu, Bandies, Ligasono, which I never pronounces Tuli's name correctly. I thought they held up better on the defensive line than the offensive line did. Thought the linebackers didn't play that well. Injuries factor for everybody. They're certainly a factor for UW. Ilofoshu did not play well. Jackson Sherman put up some impressive numbers, but it just wasn't. He didn't play the run very well. The secondary, the corners weren't really tested. Trent McDuffie and Kyler Gordon didn't have many chances. They struggled, I thought, in run support. The safeties did a poor job in the run game again. Disappointed with how this defense is playing, and offensively they don't score enough points. So there's a problem at Washington. There's going to have to be a serious look inside what they're doing and how they're teaching it at UW. Jimmy Lake's not in trouble of getting fired now, but he's going to have to make some changes on his staff to fix it. They're not going to be real patient with him. This is a huge drop off, and I'm already sensing, I don't think that Chris is interested in coming out of retirement or anything like that. But I got to tell you, they need to get some positive things going for them right now. And I'm wondering how this is going to be handled, because that is something to watch this offseason at UW. For Arizona, they held the 13-0 lead at the half. Arizona had a 9-point lead in the fourth quarter. Costly errors, 21-16. And look, get this. People talk to me often about, well, if we would have made this mistake or that mistake, we would have. That's what makes you a bad team. Not just bad talent, not just bad coaching, but bad teams make mistakes. They make errors at a greater rate than good teams, very often than not. Look, they took a 3-0 lead on a block punt, but they just couldn't hold on. Just awful mistakes. Look, to me, I thought the turning point was they were trailing 21-16, and Arizona would stop Washington on third down with 2:31 to play, 12 men on the field. Washington gets a fresh set of downs, and Arizona would not get the ball back until there were about 20 seconds left in the game. Okay, so they had a chance to come back and win, and there you go. Cal ends their losing skid. They beat a Colorado team that's really having a hard time to find their way. Remember when Colorado's was getting some kudos into their performance and keeping the game close against A&M? Cal needed this win big. Colorado's just gotten worse and worse. Cal scored on every possession of the first half. Jay Scarber's played very well. He ran it. He threw it well. I thought they had a balanced attack on offense. They had 225 passing yards, 213 rushing yards. And defensively, they played pretty good game. Colorado can't move the football. 104 yards, 7 first downs. Um, you know, there was some penalties from Cal. They ran a lot of 13 personnel in the game, had some success, and really confused Colorado in the game. I think one they did a good job with the trap play. The Colorado defensive tackles were getting trapped. I thought Matt Cindric played well. I mentioned him in the game balls. It's one of the reasons I thought they set up the quick hitting trap very, very effectively. Thought they used the tight ends very well, very effectively, had a lot of success. Pass rush, um, was fairly effective. I thought they had good distribution with their wide receiver reps. Thought the running back rotation was pretty effective. Um, just a solid performance by Cal, but Colorado every snap of the game. There's just not a lot of positives there. This is another place that's going to have to look quickly at some of their coaching moves. Listen, Carl's fine. Carl's new in his tenure and thought he did a pretty good job, all things considered, last year. But it's been a disaster this year. They've gotten progressively worse. They do not have enough talent. Obviously, they're making changes mid-season on their coaching staff. I think there are going to be more. This is going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I did think that Christian Gonzalez played well, as well as Isaiah Lewis and Mekhi Blackman in the secondary. That was the strength there. Pardon me. I thought Gustav, the outside backer, and Lamb, the inside backer, played well. But there's just not much. Offensively, they've got no answers. So they've got a big hole to dig out of. So that's another program that's got a lot of work to get done in this offseason. Oregon, we mentioned getting it done against UCLA. It's a back-and-forth, entertaining game. Oregon is the only remaining ranked team in the Pac-12. They fell behind 14-0, and the Bruins came out like a ball of fire. They're up like 14-0. They missed a field goal, and Oregon drove right back down for an 80-yard drive, and Dye ran the football very well for them. The guy that deserves a lot of credit is Joe Moorhead. They only lost one game, and Joe wasn't available. He had the illness and didn't coach against Stanford. This offense is very well coached. Their run game scheme is outstanding. And while we've seen a lot of the success this year at points in times with Chip's offense, I think an attaboy needs to go to this Oregon offense and Joe Moorhead. What a great job they did. And they just took the game over, really. And then the Bruins came back. They cut into the lead. Dorian Thompson-Robinson made a couple of big plays with his feet. Brown threw an interception, which he's prone to do a little bit of. And then you had a returned it in the end zone, and Britton Brown touchdown. It's 34-31, and it's like, whoa. This was really fun. It was in the end, Kayvon Thibodeau that shut it out, made the big play, and kept UCLA from coming all the way back. But this wasn't much that separated the two teams here. I thought the stretch in which after the opening stretch of the game and the end stretch, the middle stretch was the best Oregon's offense has looked all year long. They went on to score 34 of the next 37 points, flipped the game around. I mean, flipped it completely upside down and took it over. And that was the difference. I mean, they got down 14, as I mentioned, turned it around, and then kind of lost at the end, which is going to catch up with Oregon in one of these games down the stretch because I think they'll lose one game at some point. And then if they were to make the playoffs, this will kill them because I don't think they're good enough at the quarterback position. You've heard me mention that. But I do think, again, they're very well coached on offense. A lot of credit there. I thought the overall offensive game plan, and even though Brown turned the football over, I thought he moved the team very well in that stretch that I'm talking about. I thought the running backs ran hard, ran well. Very, very impressed with how Dye played. Really, all the backs. I thought the pass catchers did a really good job. Devin Williams was awesome in the game. Pittman, Johnson, all splashed in the game. I thought the offensive line did a pretty good job. You got to remember, they've had a ton of injuries. Speaking of injuries, Forsythe was not available again for the third straight game. Um, Jackson Powers Johnson and Stephen Jones exited with injuries. TJ Bass started at left tackle, and he was starting the previous 13 at guard. I thought they played pretty well. I thought they had really good angles into the second level of UCLA's defense. Did an outstanding job. Defensively, overall, I thought they had a good game plan. I thought, again, for stretches, they gave up early and late, but I thought they played pretty well, particularly on the defensive line was very, very good. UCLA averaged nearly 230 yards on the ground. They were held to below 50% of that, 110 yards. Very impressive. Zach Charbonnet and Britton Brown ran it 28 times combined for 80 yards. It's 2.9 a carry. That's getting it done. Thought the linebackers filled hard and well. Noah Sewell is a beast. He is the guy that doesn't get talked about enough on Oregon's defense. Now, Kayvon Thibodeau's great. Noah Sewell has graded out every bit as good, and he's been consistent, it's been healthy. Defensive backs, I thought, did a real good job as well as the special teams. DTR was inconsistent, but boy, he played well in stretches, and which they were. Ethan Garbers looked sharp when he came into the game. Boy, I thought he threw some nice balls when DTR had to go out. The backs, as I mentioned, the overall offensive line play was poor. Not a lot of run creases, but the backs didn't get a whole lot going there. I thought, when Alex Anderson went out, it hurt their offensive line a lot. But, man, they completely collapsed, and they were completely controlled by Oregon's defensive front. I thought the interior line struggled to get any push in the second half, and I thought that was a big difference in the game. I thought the tight ends were inconsistent. Dulcich, for all the great plays he's made this year, he's had some key drops in some key games, and he did again. I thought the job working around the problems of the offensive line in terms of the game plan and play calling was very average. I thought the defensive line play was below average. I thought they needed to play very, very well in this game. They did not. Um, so, again, you're facing an offensive line in Oregon that's got some injuries. You've got a Dye that's a good back. UCLA's had some good edge rushers over the years. They've not had that. Think about it, whether it's Ball or Justin Hickman or Anthony Barr or Tack McKinley, they got nobody that can rush the passer from the outside, and it showed again. I didn't like the way the linebackers played. I thought the inside backers were fairly good against the run, but boy, they didn't. Bo Calvert didn't play well. Carl Jones has not stepped up. I'm really disappointed at the linebacking core. Even more disappointed in the secondary. Brown hasn't been real accurate, yet they still were able to have success. So defensively was really bad. Special teams was bad. Really, really a poor performance for UCLA considering the start. And they played their way out of it and worked their way back in. But really disappointing performance because that was a game they could have had. And I kind of thought they would end up winning it. They didn't get it done. Washington State falls to BYU. BYU is 4-0 against Pac-12 teams. Actually think that Washington State's playing pretty well, but they had some mistakes that were critical, particularly on the offensive line, holding calls by Liam Ryan and Brian Green that were costly. Special teams have been very inconsistent. I had a shank punt by Nick Habner, bobbled snap on a PAT that cost them. Kind of the lethargic crowd, um, um, you know, was a was an issue and a problem. I didn't think the tackling was good on defense, so really, really disappointing there. USC and Notre Dame. Um, look, USC's lost each of the last 3 meetings against Notre Dame. They hadn't beaten the Irish in South Bend in 10 years. It tells you where this program has been. You don't want to beat a dead horse, pardon the pun, Trojan horse. You get it. The offense continues to look mediocre at best. When USC was able to get the ball in the end zone, it was too little too late. Notre Dame didn't play all that well, but they still were able to control the game here. Positives, I thought Keontae Ingram played well. Thought he ran the football hard, well, productive. Drake London continues to be a real big positive for them. Keaton Slovis played, I think he's regressed. Messy game. I think the guy's got NFL ability, and he's just really not very well coached. Offensive line struggles again. Freshman tackles Cortland Ford and Jonathan Mohem, they're overwhelmed on passing downs. They really are struggling in their pass sets from a technique standpoint. They don't have enough pressure from their defensive line. It's just a depth issue. Played a lot of guys in the secondary. I just think that there's lots of penalties. Just a real big, continuing to be a disappointing performance. USC needs this is a quicker fix than people think. This is a team that just needs better direction, better discipline, better coaching. There's some talent there to work with. They can vault to the top of the Pac-12 South very easily with adequate coaching. Oregon State, in what I thought was a surprise and a nice win for them against Utah. Look, I thought Utah was going to run away with it early. They took a 14-0 lead, 2 Cameron Rising touchdown passes. And following a 3-and-out, the Beavers answered long touchdown drive with Anthony Gould's 14-yard run, and Utah extended the lead. One more touchdown on the board before halftime after forcing an Oregon State fumble. Second half, total domination by the Beavers. They kind of gnawed at the lead with the Chance Nolan touchdown. Then they forced the punt, and it was blocked, which is unusual for Utah to have a breakdown on special teams. Utah kind of stole the lead back. Then the Beavers had full of explosive plays. Man, did they make some big-time plays. The Trey Lowe run was big. Then the go-ahead touchdown run, 3 plays and the 10-yard pitch to Bradford. Then they forced another punt blocked it again with Omar Speights taking the ball inside the Utah 10-yard line. But they were called for a penalty. They having 2 players on the field wearing the same number. Utah would keep the drive alive, missed a field goal. Then that was all the wiggle room that Oregon State needed. Nolan led the Beavers down the field, and Baylor, as I mentioned, played well. One of my game balls, 8-yard touchdown run. Oregon State's now up 42-31. It was really an interesting game. Oregon State was coming off a bye week. They should have been prepared. That, again, didn't come out well, but they really forced some turnovers. I thought Utah helped the cause with some negative mistakes, but I thought the fact that Oregon State played hard for 4 quarters and showed life, and was really impressed with what they were able to do. For Utah, lost their first conference game in what was kind of a shootout game. I thought Cameron Rising played well for the most part. His mobility is going to help them and be an X factor, maybe against an Oregon. We'll see. We'll see what happens in the rest of the South. Utah's not out of it. Um, but I think the fact that they've stabilized their quarterback or playmaking ability at quarterback is key. Um, it, it's the Devon Veely is a big time weapon and the guy that they turn to for the big plays in that offense. They need to get the football to him all over the field, screens, flea flickers, and they do. He's really a talented guy. He's the best receiver they have. He's the best offensive player they have. Um, the thing that I'm not seeing out of this Utah team is their run defense is not as good as they have been. They have been very, very sound with their gap control in the past. They're not very good. I thought Oregon State dominated them. They created run creases consistently, and that's how they flipped the game around. So it wasn't a really good performance. Tavian Thomas had a good game. Covey played well. Rising played well. But, it's defensively where I'm a little bit concerned. I thought that uh, Piotinu, the defensive tackle who didn't start, played fairly well. Nifi Sewell at linebacker did a decent job, but we're not seeing enough out of the defensive front making plays for this Utah team. Folks, before I get to the games of the weekend, I want to tell you about our good friends at the Daily Tip presented by BetMGM for the best betting analysis and information. Look, if you're into sports betting, I'll just tell it like it is. You know how quickly the lines can change. And when you've got a lot riding on those odds, it pays to stay ahead of the curve. So before placing your bets, listen to the Daily Tip presented by BetMGM for the best betting analysis and information. They are fun, informative, and extremely helpful. A lot can change between last night's game and today's odds. The Daily Tip gives you an early look at all the angles. Hosts Michael Jenkins and Chelsea Messinger break down the big takeaways and make sure that you know everything you need to bet smarter. With featured guests like bookmakers, Odyssey insiders, and BetMGM experts, you'll always get a fresh take on the action. Your friends will be wondering what you know that they don't. Not that you got to tell them where you heard it. Look, as much fun as it is to bet on the game, it's even more fun when you've got the inside scoop. Ready to bet with an edge? Tune in to the Daily Tip presented by BetMGM. Listen weekdays, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern on Odyssey, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. The games of the week, as we mentioned, as we get into the action, you've got Arizona at USC, as I mentioned, Washington State at Arizona State. We've got Oregon State at Cal. You've got Colorado at Oregon. You've got Washington at Stanford. You got UCLA at Utah. And I think I said Washington State at Arizona State. So that's the lineup for the weekend. Obviously, there's some intrigue there, but the real key, I think, is to try to figure out where the South is going to go. I'm not conceding the North to Oregon, although I still think they should win it. I like their chances better. The South is, but Oregon State's got a shot, and certainly wouldn't rule anything out there. It's the South that's intriguing to me because Utah, Arizona State, even UCLA still in it, but Utah, Arizona State kind of intrigues me in terms of the two teams that that I think have the best chance of winning the South, at least kind of the way it shapes up now. So, obviously, with the game in hand, Utah like their chances a little bit here. So we'll see where it plays out. The UCLA game, though, is going to be very tricky for them. So we'll keep an eye out on that. A reminder that we're going to have all the games broken down inside the film room over at LandryFootball.com. Check out the previews, check out the recaps. And look, if you would, check out LandryFootball.com where you can download this podcast. Sign up for Pac-12 football and beyond. If you do that, it helps us with the analogs, the analytics, and it helps determine whether we continue to do the show beyond the football season because that tells us how interested you are in some of the shows. I recognize that maybe some of the other shows are a little bit more important, but we try to cover everything and try to do it this way. So we're looking for your feedback. So appreciate you joining us today. Join us in a little bit, a few minutes. We'll be breaking down the Big 12, the latest in the Texas Tech coaching search, as well as all the teams, all the games, breaking it down here on Big 12 football and beyond in just a little bit. So long, everybody. Appreciate you. Talk soon.